A tweet would go viral revealing how XXXTentacion used Drake to fake his passing in order to escape the music industry. The start of the thread shared photos of an individual on a TV program looking a lot like XXXTentacion. People researched into this TV program as this was a documentary based on a religious camp. This one in particular has no internet access, no TV access, or any access to the public, making it a perfect spot for someone to distance themselves from the world. To understand this further, we first need to review XXXTentacion's passing, as the trial for his passing was a complete mess, as Michael Boatwright, Dedrick Williams, and Trayvon Newsom were all three sentenced to life inside a prison, while at the same time, all three of their lawyers pleading that they never did the crime, alongside the fourth suspect, Robert Allen, making a snitching deal with the feds, and he was only sentenced to a few years. However, the real mess was when fans and even lawyers during X's trial believed and argued that Drake was responsible for X's passing.
Before X, he said, if anything, it's Drake. And do you think that for one moment, here today, days after the event, two masked men, right? He came on social media and said, guys, if anything, it's Drake. Do you think in that time span that they went and they addressed him, they talked to him? No. Do you think sitting here today, years later, any detective has ever asked, Drake or anybody like that? No, they never did that. So you ask yourself, how could that be? And you say, hey, it's so-and-so, you better believe so-and-so is gonna get investigated. But in this case, they didn't do it. They didn't do it because it didn't comport with their version and their narrative. And as law enforcement, I think that they have the obligation to do so.
As the lawyer states that Drake is responsible for it due to X putting on Instagram, if anyone tries to get me, it was at Champagne Poppy, aka Drake. I'm snitching right now. To understand this fully, we need to dive deep into the day of June 18th, 2018, which is the day that XXXTentacion sadly passed. His day begins with him hopping into his black BMW i8 and driving over to Riva Motorsports, a massive retailer for motorcycles, boats, and off-roading vehicles. Once arriving to Riva, X would find a motorcycle that he likes and would like to purchase, and then also learning they do cash deals for a discount. X would then leave Riva, calling his mother to update on buying the new motorcycle as someone needs to drive his vehicle home. His mother tells him to pick up his uncle so then he can drive the i8 while X drives the motorcycle home. XXXTentacion then quickly picks up his uncle, then driving over to the Bank of America, as security surveillance would show XXXTentacion walking into the bank. During X's trial, the bank teller in the video was brought to the stand, mentioning that the Florida rapper wanted $250,000 in cash. However, she had to reject him as their policies only allow $50,000 in withdrawals without a cash order. She handed over X $50,000 and then ordered the rest for a later date. While XXXTentacion is busy getting the money from the bank teller, what he didn't realize was the four suspects were scouting out his supercar that was sitting in the parking lot. Robert Allen mentioned that the four were already planning on robbing somebody in order to get some quick cash for the day, as he would mention that XXXTentacion's vehicle practically just fell into the palm of their hands. As once realizing whose this vehicle was, they immediately began tailing him all the way back to Riva Motorsports. They had two objectives. They wanted to snatch his diamond chain, and they also wanted to know what was in the Louis V duffel bag. X would then leave the Bank of America and begin driving over to Riva for the final time. Arriving back at Riva, XXXTentacion would park his vehicle in their own parking lot. Meanwhile, the four suspects would park their van across the street. Two men would hop out of the van to watch X from a distance inside of the store, keeping an eye on him, making sure he doesn't go anywhere, while also trying to see what's in the Louis V bag. The other two men then parked their vehicle outside across the street, trying to stay out of the way of any cameras. The two men that followed X into the store also ended up buying the ski masks and gloves that they used during the crime. However, here's surveillance photos of them entering the shop with X. The craziest part is that XXXTentacion makes eye contact with one of the suspects as caught on tape. With X continuing to look over at motorcycles with his uncle, he ends up changing his mind and not even wanting to purchase one anymore. X would then leave the motorcycle store store wearing the Louis V bag still with him with all of the cash. Making his way back to his BMW after roughly 30 minutes, the two suspects on the inside would also start sprinting over to the van that's located across the street. It would be this moment where XXXTENTACION sits in park inside of his vehicle on his cell phone for roughly 5 minutes, being a massive mistake, as this gave the two suspects from inside of the store enough time to get to their vehicle across the street. When it was time to leave, XXXTENTACION turns on his vehicle. While trying to exit the one-way parking lot, the minivan with the four suspects begins speeding right in front of X's vehicle. Preventing X from being able to drive away, two men hopped out of the van, holding firearms, demanding him to roll his windows down and hand over the chain in the bag of cash. XXXTENTACION was refusing, making the men very angry. With so much pressure going on in this moment, X's uncle in the passenger seat would be seen then opening his door, sprinting away, leaving X all by himself. As without even realizing, his uncle just opened up a door, giving them full access to XXXTENTACION's car. One of the suspects would then sprint around to the other side of the vehicle, hopping into the car with X, and sadly we all know what happened after that. The two men were able to run off with X's Louis V bag, as well as one of his diamond chains. In court, it was revealed, prosecutor says Dedrick Williams was driving and cut off the car being driven by X. Michael Boatwright and Trayvon Newsom put on the ski masks and had the firearm. The passenger manages to run away. They approach X and Boatwright does the act towards him. As the XXXTENTACION trial thankfully featured one snitch. This would be Robert Allen, as he would share what exactly happened with the $50,000 in cash that they stole from X, alongside photos of them even flexing the money. Michael Boatwright, Dedrick Williams, and Trayvon Newsom all received $15,000 of that money, meaning that Robert was only given $5,000. Pretty interesting, the man paid the least amount of money is now the one snitching. As this tweet was also shared sharing pictures taken after X's passing, same day shows defendant Michael Boatwright flexing a lot of cash. Defendant turned state testifies that this is XXXTENTACION's money, and photos were taken hours after the incident. As shortly after, Robert Allen would then share what X's last words were. As shared by DJ Akademiks, the last words were, "What is this for?" Making the passing feel even more upsetting, as X didn't really understand what was truly happening, as this is where the mystery of Drake's involvement starts to come in. To understand this fully, we need to dive deep into how their beef even started, which began with X making a tweet stating, "Drake's mom is kinda cute." A few months later, XXXTENTACION would then be arrested, as while he was sitting in jail, his hit song "Look at Me" was going viral online in a huge way. Drake noticed the traction that the song was getting. He would then release a song titled KMT, stealing the exact flow, speed, and even a similar beat of X's song. A few weeks went by, then X would then be released from jail after beating his charges, and he went straight after Drake, which would even cause more issues between the two behind the scenes. Then after XXXTENTACION would sadly pass, a song with very strange lyrics, which would read, "Maybe I should do a 20, maybe I should break that 20, do a 10. Maybe I should break that 10, do a 5. If it goes live, do a 5 again. If he held his tongue on that live, he'd be alive again." As if you remember, XXXTENTACION did an Instagram live where he would make statements about Drake and his mother, as shared earlier. Also, when you break down those lyrics, it goes as follows. If you break a 20, you get 2 10s. Then if you give a 5 and it goes live, do a 5 again, 5 plus 5 being the number 10, leaving you with 3 number 10s, as in Roman numerals, 3 10s is also 3 X's. Many believe that this is not a coincidence and that this was a targeted deal by Drake, but what do you think?